Welcome back to the Warbird Mistress. I know it's been a while, and I thank you for all of your patience while I tried to figure out a new format that's going to save me time in doing this so I could also do some side projects and actually keep a job and pay bills and things like that. So this is the week of Friday the 12th of June 1942, and this is A Walk Through the War. As I said, this is the debut of a new format for the series, one that will cover an entire week at a time. This will make the presentation a great deal more efficient as each theater of operations activities for the week are covered in chapters in the video, rather than every calendar day being a chapter that covers every theater's activities. I think this makes it easier to understand what's going on in each area without jumping back and forth with each calendar day, since we stay in each theater through the week before moving on to the next geographic area. I've divided the video according to how each of the operations was divided by the Army Air Forces, with a few notable exceptions. First, there's the American Theater of Operations. This includes Alaska, the Zone of the Interior, and the Caribbean areas. The Territory of Alaska is covered separately from the Interior and the Caribbean for many reasons, including the unique nature and independence of operations there, the geographic distance, and the desire to have the map move around as little as possible. The other two kind of go together for, again, a number of reasons, so I'm not creating a separate chapter for the Caribbean commands unless something major happens, like the Japanese invading the Galapagos or the Italians bombing the Panama Canal. Second, there's the European Theater of Operations. I'm sure that in time this will be a great deal more engaging than it is now, and the complex nature of air operations over Europe is one reason I chose this change in format. This will overwhelmingly be the activities of the 8th Air Force. Third, there is the Mediterranean Theater of Operations, which includes North Africa, the Middle East, the Near East, Italy, Greece, the Balkans, and even Romania and Bulgaria, since operations in those regions were carried out by units in the Med. Fourth, there's the Pacific. Now, the Pacific itself is divided into several theaters: the Pacific Ocean area, the CBI, the Southwest Pacific area, the Philippines, etc., etc., etc. These areas of operations will be discussed in turn, except for the rare occasions when operational activities overlap, and I'll just wing it at that point. Now, to keep track of the days, I'm no longer having the desk calendar appear between each day. That would call for more intertitles than a large print silent movie. What you will see instead is the date like this, placed in the most appropriate corner of the screen so it's easy to keep track while I narrate. So I hope the change to this new format makes sense. I definitely want to thank my subscribers, members, Patreon patrons, and viewers like you for your support. I certainly appreciate your patience while I tried a few things before getting it to be how I wanted. And of course, this is really all about you, so please, I beg of you, I want to hear feedback about it before I put out the next one. And with that, on with our really big show. So we begin with the American Theater of Operations with the 11th Air Force in the Territory of Alaska. Starting on Friday the 12th of June 1942, we see the 42nd Fighter Squadron, 54th Fighter Group, move from Harding Field, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, to Kodiak, Alaska, with their P-39 Airacovers. The same day, a half-dozen B-17s and a single B-24 bomb shipping in the harbor at Kiska Island. They damage a cruiser heavily, and one destroyer is seen on fire. On Saturday the 13th, an LB-30 flies a weather mission, and for the third straight day, shipping in the harbor at Kiska is bombed, this time by 5 B-17s and 3 B-24s. Two of the bombers turn back, the others bomb partially cloud-obscured targets, and no effect is observed. On the 14th, we see 4 B-17s and 3 B-24s attack Kiska Island, again, the shipping in the harbor predominantly, and they bomb from an altitude of 700 feet, which is the lowest altitude as of yet. They hit 2 cruisers, and 1 scout seaplane is shot down. 2 B-17s are heavily damaged, but return to base, and in response, the Japanese bomb Nazan Bay on Etka Island. On Monday, we see the bombing mission to Kiska Island carried out by 3 B-17s and 2 B-24s, but it is aborted due to weather. And on Wednesday again, the weather is once more just not really in the mood for it, and a patrolling mission by the heavy bombers is cancelled. On Thursday, the 18th, we see 1 LB-30 Liberator, 3 B-17s, and 4 B-24s make a precision high-altitude attack on Kiska Harbor. They set one of the transports on fire and it's observed sinking, another is damaged severely, and 2 scout planes are likely shot down as far as they know. One of the B-24s crashes into the sea and part of the crew is saved by a patrol bomber later on. Now, staying in the ATO, we move to the zone of the interior and the Caribbean. On Sunday the 14th, the 32nd, 352nd, 353rd, and 419th Bombardment Squadrons Heavy of the 301st Heavy Bomb Group cease operations from Muroc Army Air Base, California, and they return to their base at Alamogordo in New Mexico. They fly B-17s, and they are no longer assigned to ASW patrols. The 358th, 359th, and 360th Bomb Squadrons of the 303rd Heavy Bomb Group also ceased flying their ASW patrols as they moved from Muroc to Gowan Field in Boise, Idaho with their B-17s. The next activity we see is on Tuesday, where the headquarters of the 40th Bomb Group Heavy and the 29th Bomb Squadron Heavy moved from Borinquen Field, Puerto Rico to Howard Field Canal Zone and Agua Dulce, Panama, respectively. They fly B-18 Bolos and A-17 Nomads. Now, the Nomad may be overlooked by many as a pre-war plane out of American service by the time of Pearl Harbor. She in fact served until 1944 in very small numbers. A development of Northrop's Gamma 2F, she was a 2-seat single-engine strike aircraft with semi-retractable gear and perforated flaps to assist in diving. She is most famously seen in Swedish service, thanks to the movie Första Divisionen, and she is a curious bird, to say the least. Maybe I'll have to do a video on her one day. In the zone of the interior, still on Tuesday, the 40th Bomb Squadron Medium of the 13th Medium Bomb Group moves from Westover Field, Chicopee Falls, Massachusetts, to Langley Field in Hampton, Virginia, with their B-18s as they continue their anti-sub patrols. Come Wednesday the 17th, we see the 433rd Medium Bomb Squadron of the 45th Medium Bomb Group move from Mitchell Field in Hempstead, Long Island, to Miami Army Airfield, Florida, where detachments had already been sent as they continue their anti-sub patrols, flying Lockheed RB-37 Venturas, flying over the Gulf and the Caribbean this time. Worth noting here is that the R does not stand for recon, but for restricted, in that the model, in Army service, was not approved for aerobatics, combat, passenger use, or any other use outside of its prescribed role. And now with the Caribbean, we see the 395th Bomb Squadron Heavy of the 40th Heavy Bomb Group move from Borinquen Field, Puerto Rico, to Rio Hato, Panama, with their B-18s and A-17s. In addition to anti-sub patrols, the 395th also serves as a replacement training unit. On Thursday the 18th, Prime Minister Winston Churchill arrives in Washington, D.C. for a series of conferences that last until the 25th of June with President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Tomorrow, the two leaders meet at FDR's home in Hyde Park for 2 days of preparatory discussions prior to the formal beginning of the conference on the 21st. Subjects discussed include war production, shipping, assistance for China, diversion of Germany from the Eastern Front, and for the first time, atomic research. They also meet with the Pacific War Council and the 19-year-old King Peter II of Yugoslavia, together with his foreign minister, Momcilo Ninchits. They also meet Chinese and Soviet representatives, although they are not engaged necessarily in the negotiations. FDR and Churchill also agree to begin preparations for Operation Torch. And FDR announces his decision that Dwight D. Eisenhower will be Commander-in-Chief of the American forces in the European Theater of Operations. And that concludes our journey through the American Theater of Operations, so we move over to the ETO with the 8th Air Force. On Friday the 12th, yet another contingent of personnel for HQ 8th Air Force and their subordinate commands arrives, and the units arriving with them are the headquarters of the 60th Transport Group, which is at Chelmsford, Northamptonshire, 309th Fighter Squadron of the 31st Fighter Group at High Air Call, Shropshire, the 341st Bombardment Squadron Heavy of the 97th Heavy Bomb Group at Polbrook with B-17s, making them the second unit to have aircraft and the first Flying Fortress unit in Britain. All three squadrons fly their first operational mission on 17 August. On Saturday the 13th, we see the headquarters of the 97th Bomb Group Heavy arrive at Polbrook. On Sunday, the aircraft program for the Army Air Force in the UK is revised from 3,649 aircraft down to 3,266 aircraft, and the date of the anticipated final strength is advanced 1 month to 1st April 1943. As we move to Monday, the 15th of June, we see Major General Carl Spaatz, commanding General of the 8th Air Force, arrive in the UK. The 8th Bomber Command takes a significant step towards development of the organization for control of combat operations by establishing the 1st Bombardment Wing Provisional at the former girls' school famously managed by Ridley Haim Herschel at Brampton Grange Estate in Cambridgeshire. The wing is to take orders from 8th Bomber Command and direct the operations of B-17 squadrons in East Anglia arriving from the United States. And we finish on Wednesday, the 17th of June, as the 5th Photographic Reconnaissance Squadron of the 8th Air Force arrives in Molesworth from the U.S. with their F-4 Lightnings. This is the unarmed recon version of the P-38. Their first operational mission will be in November. Moving south to the Mediterranean, we see some overlap from the CBI as the Halverson Detachment of the 10th Air Force is the first unit to enter this theater of operations. Better known as HALPRO, the Halverson Detachment is named for Colonel Harry Halverson, the commanding officer. It is a group of 23 B-24 Liberators originally destined to join the 10th Air Force. The mission on which they first set off was an ambitious one. They were to bomb the Japanese home islands from bases in China. They had planned to fly from Florida through Africa, Arabia, Persia, and British India to China. However, they found their final destination cut off by the successful May 1942 Japanese offensive, which took Chekiang out of Allied hands. This is the coastal province south of Shanghai. They were then retasked with disrupting German petroleum plants in support of the British in North Africa and the Near East. Leaving the United States on the 22nd of May 1942, they flew for Egypt via West Africa and the Sudan, finally arriving after a stressful journey of 4,000 miles that wreaked havoc on many of the aircraft. Upon arrival in Egypt, 10 were grounded. Therefore, only 13 are available for the first mission in the ETO, which happens on Friday, the 12th of June, 1942. They take off during the night of the 11th and 12th from Fayed, Egypt, to bomb oil fields at Ploiești, Romania. A total of 12 aircraft attack in the dawn hours, and on their return, 4 of the 13 land at RAF Habaniya in Iraq, as had been planned. 3 land at other Iraqi fields, 2 land in British-occupied Syria, and 4 are interned in neutral Turkey. Though damage to the target is negligible, the raid is significant because it is the first Army Air Force combat mission in the European, African, Middle East theater in World War II, and the first strike at a target which will later become famous. For more on Romania and Ploiești, I do recommend, therefore, my own video, Liberators versus the Vânătoare, which is really about the Royal Romanian Air Force. Anyway, on Monday the 15th of June 1942, we see the first American strike against Italy, as 7 B-24s of the HALPRO detachment participate in the action taking place in support of the convoy operations to Malta, known as Operations Harpoon and Vigorous. Coming from the east and the west, the dual convoy approach is designed to divide the Italian naval assets and make them more vulnerable to the Mediterranean fleet and the newly reinforced Maltese and North African air assets. Facing them are a task force of 2 Littorio-class battleships with 4 cruisers and 10 destroyers moving out of Taranto to intercept the eastern convoy, and 2 cruisers with their escorting destroyers which are poised to strike from Palermo, as well as the assets of the Regia Aeronautica, particularly their torpedo-bombing SM-79 Spaveros. This sets the stage for what will become the Battle of Pantelleria in the western approaches and the Battle of mid-June 1942 in the eastern approaches, which is where we and Convoy Mike Whiskey 11 are concerned. It is worth noting that the Italians knew what was going on thanks to Colonel Bonner Fellers. He was the American military attaché in British Egypt, and as he cabled Washington on the matter, he did so not knowing that the American military codes had already been broken by the Servizio Informazioni Militare, and so the Italians kind of knew what was going on. That doesn't mean they succeeded. So let's look at Monday now at 0350 to 0920 hours on the morning of the 15th. The 7 B-24s, along with 2 Royal Air Force Liberators flying out of Egypt, and a dozen torpedo-carrying Beauforts of 217 Squadron, in a synchronized strike out of Malta, are dispatched to attack the Italian fleet 210 miles dead east of Malta. It consists of 2 task forces, one of 2 battleships, a cruiser, and 7 destroyers, and one some distance away of 2 cruisers and 7 destroyers. The Beauforts flying out of Malta are intercepted by Bf-109s en route, and 2 were lost to the German fighters. 5 more are forced to turn back home. The Beauforts strike with 9 torpedoes on the lead task force, a task force already slowed down by a torpedo strike by Wellingtons that had happened in the overnight hours. A single torpedo hit either the battleship or a heavy cruiser with a column of water followed by thick smoke pouring from a stricken hull, smoke so thick it was visible 35 miles away. Another torpedo hit a second battleship or heavy cruiser, causing flames and dense black smoke to erupt from her. The second ship is likely the lead battleship Littorio, as she suffers severe damage during the battle, although she does limp back to port. The third torpedo hit a destroyer amidships, resulting in a column of smoke and a strong list to port. And as the B-25s approach, their bombs also hit 2 battleships or heavy cruisers, and the cruiser Trento is sunk by the Beauforts. Any damage done by the Liberators is unknown, as the damage from the Beauforts takes the cake today. No Liberators are lost in the scrap, while a single Beaufort fails to return from the strike after pushing her torpedo attack through to the Littorio. Already heading back towards Taranto, having been pursued by the RAF throughout their daring interception mission, the Italians hasten their withdrawal as much as their damaged motors permit them, having taken down but a single Beaufort with their Ack-Ack. And finally, on Wednesday the 17th of June, after a day of rest from the eventful escapades off Malta, the Halpro detachment is ordered 30 miles west to the suburbs of Cairo to report to Brigadier General Russell Maxwell, designated Commanding General, U.S. Army Forces in the Middle East. He works in coordination with British, Commonwealth, Imperial, and Egyptian forces as the plans for American involvement in North Africa gain momentum. And now we move to the Pacific Theater of Operations, where we start off with the 5th Air Force in the Southwest Pacific area. On Friday the 12th, B-17s flying out of Australia bombed the building area, Vanakanao Airfield and Lakunai Airfield at Rabaul, New Britain Island. On the 13th, the strikes are repeated. On the 15th, we see the 63rd Bomb Squadron Heavy of the 43rd Heavy Bomb Group move from Sydney to Charleville, Australia with their B-17s. On Tuesday, B-26s, B-25s, and B-17s pwned Lae and Salamaua, New Guinea, hitting runways and buildings and starting several fires. And after a day of rest, we move to Thursday the 18th, where the air echelon of the 69th Bomb Squadron Medium of the 38th Medium Bomb Group leaves Hickam Field in the territory of Hawaii with their B-26 Marauders and proceeds to New Caledonia Island to join the ground echelon. The squadron is involved in sea search missions until December of 42. And last but not least, we look to the 7th Air Force in the Pacific Ocean area. The activity here happens on Wednesday the 17th of June as P-40s of 73rd Fighter Squadron, 18th Fighter Group, seen here aboard the carrier Saratoga, are flown off the carrier at Midway Island to replace Navy aircraft lost in the Battle of Midway. The P-40's responsibilities are dawn and dusk patrols, and they continue to fly them until the P-40s are relieved on the 23rd of June, 1943. And that was the week that was. Friday the 12th of June, 1942 through Thursday, 18th of June, 1942. I hope this was easier to follow and just as enjoyable as the series has been. Of course, I'm going to play catch-up once I get some feedback, and I definitely want to hear how you enjoyed it, if you didn't enjoy it, if there's something I should change, if there's something I left out in some way. So, as ever, this is Claire, and I am the Warbird Mistress. Take care.